Welcome to the Clear to Close podcast with your host, local mortgage expert Ryan Bolton. Ryan has the questions and answers, tips and tricks, do's and don'ts, and expert guests to explain all the steps needed to buy or sell real estate. And now it's time for the Clear to Close podcast.
Hey everyone, Ryan here. I am a mortgage nerd. I'm with Patriot Home Mortgage in St. George, Utah. And what I want to do today is do a year in review. 2024 is in the record books. We're moving on to 2025. So I thought it'd be good to just go through a year-long review of some of the numbers, some of the stats we have. So I brought in one of our local experts here, Jared Plew with Infinity Title. And we're just going to dive into some fun slides today and just dig into what we saw on the real estate world. So Jared, appreciate you coming on the show again. You're always one of our quarterly experts, and we got some great stats. So let's just jump right into the very first slide. We got a bunch we want to get to today. Let's do it. So let's do slide number 1. Jared, what is this slide all about? And what are we talking about today on this slide?
So this is the spread. The spread, that term is used, I think, for a lot of different meanings. But in this case, what we're talking about is the difference between 30-year mortgage rates and the 10-year treasury. So the 10-year treasury is kind of the indicator for mortgage rates. They generally follow the same path, so they run parallel to each other. In the yellow line is the average, which is 1.82. So over the last 30 years, the average spread is 1.82, meaning that mortgage rates have averaged 1.82% greater than the 10-year treasury.
Right. So we hear when the feds change the rate, we're not talking about this type of index. This is more tied to the treasury. This is more tied to what long-term interest rates are based on, whether it's the 10-year, the 30-year. So you're totally right. The difference between that and interest rates are usually closer to 1.8 or 1.5, 1.8, depending on which index. But now you're seeing right now, it's been a big gap between those two, is why so many people feel the interest rates should be coming back down closer to that average.
Yeah, so right now, the mortgage rates, the spread is 0.5% higher than the average has been. And so that tells you that mortgage rates are a little bit inflated right now. Right. They're higher than what they really should be if they're following the trend of the 10-year treasury.
Yeah, and that gives you an indication of why there's some consensus that we should see rates get down, because they baked in a little bit more than what they normally do, because people are holding their loans for longer. So servicers are actually holding on to loans longer. So new loans have to offset that money not moving as much. There's not as many refinances. There's volumes down. There's not quite as much money being made on each mortgage loan. So to offset that, that's where you're seeing it's amazing how much is supply and demand. When you really break down cars or mortgages or anything, we're really seeing too much of a supply and not enough demand, even in mortgage rates.
Yeah, and I think some of the explanation of why the spread is higher than what it traditionally has been is just uncertainty. I think mortgage lenders just aren't completely confident with what the future holds, and so they're hedging that risk that they have of not knowing what's going to happen by inflating the mortgage rates a little bit to compensate for what could happen.
Totally. And you see that we saw a lot of hedging that was happening, if that's a good word to use, a kind of hedging going into election. That got done with, then we kind of have the holiday season, a lot of time. I saw this one more than any time is where the dates of the actual holidays fell. It's kind of right in the middle of the week. So it's like, well, leading up to that, everybody's kind of taking half days. They weren't working as much. Then afterwards, they're like, well, it's already Thursday. We're going to take a half day. Oh, it's Friday. Yeah. So it was like more closed inactivity than I've seen in a long time, because just the way the holidays fall.
Absolutely.
Like you'll see hedging on 3-day weekends all the time. You see kind of going into Friday afternoon on a Monday holiday where they all just kind of hedge, kind of pop everything up just so they can't react to things going on in the world for 3 days instead of just the normal weekends. So they always kind of adjust for that. I think I saw that even more during the holidays than I normally do, because so much downtime from normal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it felt like we had, I kept telling people, it feels like we have 4 mini weeks. Like we'd go to work for a day, and then we'd have a weekend coming up in the middle of the week, and then we'd have another week, and it was weird. It was just weird. Having the holidays in the middle of the week is strange.
It really is. It really is kind of, and one of the few holidays that just falls on a day and not observed on a Monday or controlled for those things, because it does cause kind of some chaos of just not being able to react to whatever's going on in the world. So let's jump to another slide. I think you got a couple other ones here. I thought this one was pretty interesting when you forwarded it to me. It's the sales per real estate agent in Washington County, Utah, here, Southern Utah.
Yeah, so this one we've looked at before. So this is updated. I think we looked at this a year ago when we reviewed 2023. And so it did tick up a little bit. So 5.7 deals or transactions per agent in 2023, and 2024 is 6.1. So it creeped up a little bit.
And this is for the year. So this is for ending 2024. This is how per transaction per agent.
Yeah,
as an average.
So the average agent did 6 transactions last year.
In Washington County.
In Washington County.
I saw the National Association of Real Estate Agents or Realtors had like their lowest level of the entire association around the entire country was less than 1 transaction. I haven't seen the 2024 numbers yet, but through like I think it was mid of last year, like the last rolling 12 months, was less than 1. So that actually shows the Washington County agents are actually up way ahead of like a national average as far as how many transactions they're doing.
Yeah. Now, just some stats to go along with that. So we have in Washington County, we have about 2,000 realtors right now. And in 2024, there were about 350 realtors that did not do 1 deal. So,
interesting.
So 0 transactions.
So this is just taking total transactions divided by agents, not saying the average agent did that. It's just how many transactions per agents we have.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. That makes sense. Okay.
And then you add another 450 or so that only did 1 transaction for the whole year.
Okay.
And so that makes up 40% of realtors. So 40% of realtors in Washington County did 1 deal or less.
Zero. Or zero.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
In Washington County. So it's definitely skewed in the top end because you have some agents that are doing, 50, 60 to 100 transactions in a year. And then you have 40% that are doing 1 or less.
Yeah, it's like that 80-20 rule, and I think it's probably 95-5, or maybe 90-10 is more what you see in the real estate agent world. I had to look at the stat too to see how that compares with the national as far as Washington County as far as per agent. But obviously every county is going to be different with how many agents they have and how many transactions they have.
Yeah.
So I saw something that might tie into that real quick. We'll jump into that. I saw the where did I see the number here? That popped in my head. Now it's gone. Oh, yeah. I want to talk about foreclosure data real quick. I thought this was pretty interesting. Kind of ties into some of these stats we're talking about. In 2024, what state do you think had the most foreclosures in 2024
What state?
What state? He has not been prepped for this.
No,
so
I haven't. I don't know. I
was a little surprised with this.
I would guess maybe New York.
No, it was actually South Dakota.
South Dakota?
Yep.
So oil was slow last year or something like that.
And North Dakota's right behind it. So North and South Dakota had over almost 8,000 in the 2 states.
Okay.
Almost 16,000 between the 2 states. So when you compare that to the lowest state, what do you think the lowest state of foreclosure? And this is actual full foreclosures, not just notice of defaults. This is actually foreclosed properties in 2024. So as the listeners are listening, you'll have a 30-day late, 60-day late, 90-day late. Then they start the notice of default, which is 90 days. If it doesn't get sold or reinstated, then it goes to foreclosure. So what gets foreclosed in 2024 might have started in 2023.
Right.
So there's always kind of a wave, and everything that goes into default doesn't end up in foreclosure. So these are ones that actually went all the way to foreclosure. Yeah. So what state do you think had the least amount?
I mean, I would guess Idaho, Utah, or Arizona.
That's kind of what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
It was actually Illinois.
Is it really?
762. So you're 7,875 in South Dakota. You're 762 in Illinois.
Total foreclosures in all the state of Illinois was 762. 762.
Yep.
That's not very many.
That's not very many especially, and this doesn't take into account population centers. I mean, if you're thinking in South Dakota, North Dakota, you've got a lot less population to have many foreclosures versus a state like Illinois that only had 762. So where did you think Utah had? I was surprised at this number.
So you have the total number of Utah?
Yep.
I'd guess
now you have
maybe
kind of 7,600 or 700.
Maybe
what do you think?
like 2,000.
Oh, look at you. See, that's why he's an expert, people. 1,968.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's close.
You were really close. But also, when you look at the population differences between a state like Illinois and Utah, it surprised me there was that many more in Utah when there's been more of an influx of people coming in. And then Nevada, just we're here kind of in the Nevada, Utah, Arizona area. Where do you think Nevada falls in that? Do you think more or less than Utah?
I would say more than Utah.
Less.
Really?
Yeah, 947 in Nevada.
What's the population difference? I mean, I know you don't know this offhand, but
I don't. I think it's funny. Utah and I've lived all my life in either Utah or Nevada. All my life for huge percentages in those two states. And they have very similar kind of north and south. You know, they kind of have the
Yeah, they
Reno,
do.
Sparks area, Tahoe kind of area, and then you have the Vegas area.
Yeah.
And Southern Utah is kind of the same thing. We got Southern and Northern Utah, where
Right.
80% probably of the population is on the Wasatch Front of Utah.
Here's your numbers.
Hey, look at this.
Nevada, 3.1 million. Utah, 3.4.
Interesting. And I wonder how much that's changed. That's 2023 data, it looks like maybe. So maybe now come up with. And look how much it's increased. I think Utah has been a benefit of exoduses from California, even Nevada, probably more than most states. That's where we've seen a lot of influxes from California and Nevada.
Yeah,
Coming up
absolutely.
the I-15 corridor, just the climates, that type of stuff, especially Southern Utah, just being such a wonderful climate versus everybody thinking it's all snow and ski resorts and the Salt Lake Valley kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it is pretty interesting to see that we had basically respectively 1,000 more foreclosures in Utah than Nevada. That surprised me.
Yeah, I pulled Washington County. I wish I would have had that one here, but I pulled Washington County stats for 2024, and I think we had like foreclosures was like 40.
Right.
It's like 40 or 50. There was hardly any, but that was, I think the year before in 2023 was like 20 or something like that. So it's going up, but it's still just absurdly low.
Well, and I think, and that's where the next thing I wanted to kind of talk about is defaults, like actual notice of defaults. That has been really record low. I mean, to give you an idea, in 2010, we had 4.9% of loans that were 90 days or more past due. So this is extensively late, pre-foreclosure, even in some sort of stage of foreclosure, was 5% of all loans around the country. We're 0.5. I mean, that is a 25-year average low of loans that are late. And I think a lot of that comes down to you can't replace the payment. The interest rate that most people have can't be replaced with a better loan, with a cheaper payment. So they're like, it's kind of back to what's normal in a way for mortgages. And that's why the housing boom happened in 2008. People said, well, you don't miss your mortgage payment. You don't go late on your mortgage because you have equity. You have a fixed payment. You're not going to walk away or be late on a mortgage that you would be late if you had financial difficulties on a car or a credit card or something like that. You know, you kind of, if you're in financial difficulty, the mortgage was kind of the last thing you're going to miss. That was the last payment you're going to miss.
Yep.
08, that got flipped on its head. It's like, well, I'm upside down. The rates are now 6 and I'm at 7, 5 and I'm at 7. I could just walk away, get a new house and just let that thing go into foreclosure. Yeah. We're seeing a dramatic reversal of that where people will miss car payments, student loans, way more other debts before they'll miss their mortgage payment.
Yeah, and I think if you're comparing it back to 08, 09, and 2010, there were a lot more people that owned multiple properties.
True. Yeah.
And so, they might have been holding on to the home they lived in, but their rentals, their vacation rentals, their second homes, those are the ones that they were just like, it's not worth it anymore.
Right. Yeah, they would still circle around the wagons to something, but it would be something, it was just way different than now. Now it's circling around all of them because they're either getting cheaper payments, better interest rates. They're not willing, and there's a lot more equity that they walk away from. So that's what we're just seeing, which is also adding to our supply issue. Foreclosures are a natural process. People have foreclosures for bad reasons, bad budget managing, but death in the family, loss of job. There's stuff that happens with foreclosures, and there's times where lenders are trying to still loan to people, and they might loan a little bit too aggressively on a certain credit score or a higher risk borrower, but that also usually returns a higher interest rate. But the idea is if you have too few of foreclosures, you're actually saying no too often. They look at the healthiness of an industry should have some foreclosures.
Yeah.
If you have that low, maybe you're saying no more than you're saying yes. And we're starting to see a push of the industry to say, okay, let's maybe start opening up some of these guidelines a little bit more, not only for just survival so we can do loans, but also because we have such a low risk investment right now that we should be able to extend those options to more people.
Yeah, it's so counterintuitive to say that foreclosures are good, but at a certain level, foreclosures are good. Like you said, that represents a healthy market. There needs to be foreclosures. Right now, in the state that we're in, it's like, why would anybody foreclose?
Right.
Like, why would you let that happen? Because chances are you've got equity in that home. Unemployment isn't high, and so unless something like that happens where values plummet and employment goes up, so people can't make their mortgage payment anymore. We're just not going to see a lot of foreclosures for the time being.
Right. So that supply is not there. There's not really existing homes going on the market because they can't replace it. So really a lot of it's had to be done with building, and that's why they're 20 million. I saw a report that showed for the country we're like 20 million short of the home supply to even be talking about some sort of crash when it comes to oversupply or really adjusting that price down. And that's when I talk to people. I'm amazed. I'm on Reddit. I'm on these sites. I'm on on sites, kind of talking with people about the industry, kind of seeing where it's going. And I still hear so many words about a crash.
Oh, yeah.
But it's funny when you talk about the crash that is supposed to be coming since 2019. It seems like there's been rumblings of a crash. Most of it is people that want the $300,000 home, the $400,000 home. And I look at that and say, okay, there may be some corrections in the higher end with rates, whatever. And the higher end's always a little more volatile than the lower end. But if you're waiting for a crash of a $300,000 home, there's way more buyers waiting for the $300,000 homes to show up that they're not going to go down. The 400's not going to go to 3. The 5's not going to go to 4. So that's where that median home price in your area is so important to look at, that's the market that's going to be the most competitive. That's the market that has the lowest amount of supply and the most, or the highest amount of demand with the lowest supply. So it's something where if you can afford a home, get on it. You can always get a better interest rate, but you're not going to see a lower price and especially in that price range.
Yeah. My son, he's a sophomore in high school, and he just started, the new semester, and he's got a real estate class.
Oh.
So last night we were just, he was just asking questions. It was super fun because he was like actually interested in the field that I'm in. And so he was asking questions, and we were talking about values and things like that, and appreciation. And he was talking about, asking about rental property. And I'm like, if you're buying a rental property, it's really difficult in St. George. Because
it always has been, but it's even more now.
Yeah, there's just always been a demand because prices are just a little higher than what maybe they should be. There's always been demand for rental properties, and so the rents and the values just aren't quite in line. And so I said it'd be really difficult to buy a rental property in St. George if you're only putting even 20% down. It's hard to cash flow it. He's like, "What's cash flow?" And he's like, so explain that, and so. Whereas I've done some research of different states because I'm like, where's the best place to buy a rental property to where it would actually cash flow? And the place, any guesses of where I found? And I didn't look at the whole country, but I was looking. I'll give you a hint. So
Argentina?
It's like, yes, you're right. No, so I looked at
Zimbabwe?
I looked at Indiana. I looked at Ohio. Oh, wow. I looked at Texas. I looked at Oklahoma. I looked at Kansas, Colorado. The place that I found where you have the best opportunity of cash flow is Wichita, Kansas.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And it's just the environment there. They have some big industry where people are transient, so they're there for a couple years and they get transferred to someplace else. And so they don't really have an interest in buying real estate in Wichita. They want to rent it.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so,
because we've seen some pockets of that in Utah, like oil fields will really have these big waves of up and down, because there'll be like a bunch of people need to work the fields, and then the price or whatever, or the regulation, whatever changes, and they all leave. So it becomes like the Virgin Valley and some of the stuff like that. And you'll see kind of that transitory nature, or what you'll see is the median income doesn't afford the median home. So that's where there's demand on rental that's way more because they can't. And that's what we see in St. George is so many people, there's places in California, some of these resort type of areas, people bring their income with them. They're not dependent on the job on the corner for their income. And they're remote workers, they're retirees. So they're able to gobble up so much of the real estate because they don't rely on the area for their income. It's always been a problem in Southern Utah. Yeah,
so many more people, and this is thanks a large part to COVID, is so many more people are deciding where they live based off where they want to live, not where their job is.
Right.
But
it's funny when I saw advertisements for what type of home you had, there's always that extra room. What do you call it? Office, den,
Yeah.
It's amazing how often the den word changed to office because everybody was looking for a remote office. I want a place in the house that has a room, a casita, something that I can really dedicate as my home office for working remotely.
Yeah.
I can shut the doors, kind of separate it from the house, but still be part of the house so I can work from home. It was amazing how much that word was searched. When you look at kind of keywords that were searched from people looking outside the area, was office. Does it have some sort of den office? And so a lot of the agents were starting to change the name of these rooms to offices because they knew people were looking for that so much.
Yeah. So I'm talking to my son, right? And I'm talking about Wichita versus St. George. And I said, you could buy a rental property in Wichita, Kansas, and it will cash flow. You put 20% down, it's going to cash flow for you. But there's more to the equation than just cash flow because most of your wealth that you build in real estate is through appreciation. And so you hold on to that house that you bought in Wichita for $200,000. You hold that for 10 years. That home's going to be worth $250,000. You buy a $500,000 house in St. George in 10 years, it's going to be worth $750,000. And so, you know, there's trade-offs to it. It's not just as simple of where should I go invest in real estate where I can actually cash flow, because you want to keep that you know, appreciation in mind, because that's where you're really going to build, you know, that wealth.
Sure. No, that's a great point. Let's talk about a couple other slides. Let's jump on to one more here. Actually, let's jump to this. We're down to about 5 minutes left. I want to talk to you about this one. I think this is a pretty interesting one. First of all, let's do some mortgage rates. As of January 2024, our rate was 6.62% as an average. At the end of the year, 6.85. So we didn't see a huge change kind of over the year. We saw some dips like we do every single time.
So that's year over year.
Yeah, that was like the start of 2024, the end of 2024, where we started and where we finished.
Hardly any change.
Really, in the end, the highest we got was 7.22. That was the actual highest average that we got. And then we saw some rates that were higher. I mean, these are averages, so you're going to see some differences there. Let's jump to a different, just back to the, we're not using that slide yet. Sorry. We get some slides we're not going to get to, it looks like, because just time. So the highest rate was May 2nd, was 7.22. This is Freddie Mac's averages, so the people are going to be higher and low. Then September 26th was our lowest at 6.08%, was our lowest rates as averages throughout 2024. So our medium was 6.73%, so we're slightly above our medium for 2024.
For the year.
Yep. That's a 52-week average as well, so that's a rolling 52-week average. So now I want to get into loan officer renewal licenses. This I thought was really pretty interesting. What do you think our high was? Like, you've been in the industry and you've seen people. What do you think?
What are we talking about?
Like
what
licensed
area?
loan officers.
What
So
area?
licensed mortgage loan for the country.
For the
this
country.
is for the country, yeah.
I don't even know what to base it off. I mean, I don't know what it's been.
421,000 and some change in July of 2021. What do you think we're at now?
Okay, so 400,000 in July of 2021.
Yep.
That was so right when things were getting
Yep.
bad. Well, no, that was when things were good, because
Yeah, it's kind of
COVID
was
happened
starting to happen. Yeah.
and then 2022 is where we kind of mortgage rates
And this is
really
actually July. That
skyrocketed.
actually shows the stat. July of 2020 was our highest peak that we've had for licensed loan officers.
I would guess less than half that.
138,000.
Yeah.
We were 165,000 at 2019. So we're still less than the 2019 kind of ramp up of what was happening with COVID. So let's jump into Utah. We had 9,085 that were open for renewal as of November 1st. What do you think at the end of the deadline, how many of them renewed their license or requested for a renewal?
Just this last November.
Yes.
Okay.
So for Utah, it's a year-long calendar. You have your license renewal every year. So we're not every 2 years. Every year we have to do our CE. We have to renew our license. So they're in Utah, 9,085. We're up for renewal.
Yeah.
So that's how many could renew.
Yeah.
They were able to renew. They had to request it and do the licensing, all that stuff. So how many do you think actually put their request in to renew?
You know, honestly, I don't know that it would change that much in my mind, because it's like you've already been through the battle. Like, you guys that are still in the industry, you mortgage loan officers that are still in the industry, like, you are warriors. Like, you have been through the battle.
Twice.
Because, if you were around in 2012. So, I don't know. I would guess maybe 8,000. So down to
4,000.
What?
451. Have requested renewal. 49% of the total licensees have actually requested.
Cut in half? Mm-hmm. Just barely.
4,606 have not yet, as of the time, the end of the renewal. So now, if they do renew now, there's late fees. They have to do certain things to kind of do it. So I think there's a lot of wait and see. I think a lot of them are like, I might not renew. I'm just going to wait.
Yeah.
I was surprised at that number.
That's crazy.
A big drop.
So that's a lot of loan officers that have been struggling for a long time, and have finally just said, you know what, I don't see the end. I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's time to pack up and do something else.
Yep. Or just something where they're going to wait. They're wait and see. I think there's a lot of wait and see. Maybe they forgot. I mean, obviously we're pretty early. There may be a bigger, I don't think it's going to stay that number. There's going to be people that maybe forgot. And in fact, one of the loan officers in our office says, I always just pay the late fee. I just forget about it. Like, just get it done. It's like November 1st is when you can start doing it. But, just the holidays, all that kind of stuff, sure.
Interesting.
And I thought that was pretty interesting, and a really telling sign that there is a wait and see. There's a lot of people that do get in this industry and out of it, whether it's real estate agents or mortgage. But that it's there's a lot less competition. What this tells me, there's a lot less people doing what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
But also shows how tough the business really can be.
So tough.
It can be really, really tough. That it's not just all gravy. But I'm here to stay. I do mortgages. That's all I do. I'm a mortgage nerd. You can see my sweater from people online here. I am a mortgage nerd, so that's all I'm going to do. In fact, I've even got this little website that's more nerd merch that has some of this merch that just has fun ways to be able to show off your inner nerd. So we'll pull that up on the screen, just different ways of saying nerd, whether you're computers or books or cars or whatever it might be. But check out that nerdmerch.com, and nerd is with a 3, just a little backwards E way to say nerd without the E. It's a 3. So I thought it was just kind of fun.
Yeah, that's cool.
But I thought it was great. Jared, I appreciate you coming on the show. I think these stats are really interesting. We only got a few seconds left here. Do you feel good or bad going into 2025? What are your overall feelings real quick?
Well, I mean, first of all, the Dodgers are going to win again, so it's going to be a good year. I think last time I was on, we were going into the playoffs. We won. We're going to win again because I'm wearing this hat.
There you go. There you go.
But 2025 is going to be great. I think it's going to be a good year. I mean, I think it's going to be more of the same, maybe a little bit better.
Great. We'll see you next time, guys. Thanks for watching.
This has been the Clear to Close podcast. Please submit your comments, questions, and topics for future episodes to cleartoclosepod@gmail.com. That's clear, the number 2, closepod@gmail.com or ryanbolton.com. Please like, follow, and share. And until next time, this is the Clear to Close podcast. The views expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of Patriot Home Mortgage, Equal Housing Lender, NMLS number 299717. This has been a production from a podcast studio.